Hi there. We are now only 1 week away from the release of Nemesis, and this afternoon Paradox dropped the patch notes for the new 3.0 update. The Dick update, which, as they keep emphasizing to all of us, is lovingly named after the author Philip K. Dick. Now 3.0 has some massive changes. They've reworked the economy, the AI, automation, and then on top of that, there are all of the paid features being released with the Nemesis DLC. So wow, such a lot of content. Let's dive into the patch notes and have a look at all the changes we can look forward to starting next week. So starting with the Nemesis expansion features, we have the spy networks we've all heard about. We can put our envoys into other empires, perform covert operations such as stealing technologies, acquiring assets, sabotaging star bases, and a lot more. We've also all heard about becoming the Crisis. We can set our empire down the path of destruction with a new Ascension perk, as they say, to become the Crisis. We can become the Galactic Custodian or the Emperor. A whole host of new fleshed out options for the Custodian of the Galactic Community, which can end up forming into the first Galactic Empire. And I think we'll all be really enjoying becoming the Senate and watching democracy die with thunderous applause. Now, something else that's getting added to, as they're pointing out here, is a new ship set, and some of those ships are quite fantastic. We're also getting 3 new music tracks. That's cool. A bunch of achievements. I think there's 10 new achievements. Yep, 10 achievements, and that's kind of the overall breakdown that we're looking at. So looking into the free features, the first thing we're going to see here is the first contact and the intel changes. Now that's been covered quite a lot. We've seen that Paradox have covered this already. That's quite interesting. We've seen the changes to spy networks and espionage. Obviously, we'll have to come to grips with how exactly that will work in the minutiae when we get to play the game itself. Now we're going to go next into the economic and population rework. So, building slots have changed. We are now getting a new district, which is the what's it called? The industrial district. Fantastic. Now, this industrial district will allow a single district to have alloy producing jobs and consumer producing jobs instead of producing them at the factories and forges that we are used to. We are still going to get the specialized districts remaining on Ecumenopolis, though, which is good. Factory and forge buildings are now going to add consumer good or ally producing jobs to industrial districts, and both are going to be exclusive and planet unique. So what we're going to have is these new industrial districts, and we can build forges as we used to. We'll only be able to build 1, and what that will do will increase the number of alloy jobs that our industrial districts create. Also, by designating the world as forge worlds or foundry worlds, so for consumer goods and for alloys, what we're going to get is a shift of jobs, 1 job shifting per industrial district between the consumer good job and the alloy job, or vice versa, which is what they've said here. Now, jumping back to building slots, something that's also been covered quite extensively out there is that building slots are going to be changing. We're no longer going to get building slots based on population. They are instead going to be based on the city, hive, or nexus districts that we have built and upgrading the capital building of the planet. Now, city districts have a purpose. Before, they created housing, which was, unless you were suffering massively from overcrowding, which was killing your pop growth, that really wasn't that big of an issue unless you really didn't like the red -3 or -4. It had a minimal effect on stability, but the main thing is it gave you some really strange bonuses in that you got clerks that you didn't really want to have working, and you got some housing you didn't really need, and it increased your empire sprawl, which is negative, and it had upkeep. So city districts, they used to be pretty rubbish. Suddenly they're essential, which I think that's a very cool change. we're also going to be seeing Ecumenopoli, Ringworlds, Hive Worlds, and Machine Worlds start with all building slots available for development, that's definitely another cool one. Branch office building slots are unlocked by upgrading the capital building now as well. So that's pretty cool. We're all going to have this. It's all going to be locked into the same kind of thing. Now, here's a big change: pop growth and assembly. So, biological pop growth now follows a curve based on the number of pops on the planet and the theoretical carrying capacity of the planet. So that sounds very straightforward, but actually there's a bit of ambiguity here, and I've not really managed to find out exactly what they mean. So I hope to find out when I get my hands on the update. But it could either be that the game works out the maximum number of pops you could have on the planet if you built the maximum number of districts given the planet's size, and that will be the theoretical carrying capacity. Or, alternatively, what could be happening, and could be quite interesting, is that it might be based on the districts you have built. So as before, you didn't want to build excess districts because they cost upkeep, you couldn't employ the jobs, there was no need to have extra excess housing and jobs unless you were trying to go for some sort of immigration build. Suddenly now it might be that you really should build an extra 3 generator districts, because having 6 empty jobs and having 6 empty housing slots, well, that's going to increase the carrying capacity of your planet and thereby increase your pop growth, which, as we all know, pop growth is essential to getting your economy going. So this is going to be interesting. Another interesting thing to note here is that this model, where we're going to see exponential pop growth, in the beginning we'll be seeing exponential pop growth as the number of pops go up, until we get this S curve where it balances off as we get to a point where the pops reach their theoretical capacity, where they've reached the limits of their environment. This is interesting because, kind of aside from the game here, it's interesting because it's actually built on the mathematics of how we model population growth, not just human populations, but the populations of, for instance, bacteria and things like that. This is how we model it. Mathematically. Trying to speak properly. So I think it's really cool that they're modeling it based on the real world maths. That's actually pretty awesome, especially if you're into the role play aspect of things. So it's definitely be getting more of a simulator, as much as a science fiction space game can be a simulator of the real world. So base assembly values have been adjusted. The expected number of pops in the late game will now be significantly lower. This is going to be great. This is going to really help the late game lag that we've all been experiencing, even with fantastic rigs. If you're running a huge galaxy and there are 50,000 pops, it takes the end of month, and each tick can take a lot longer than it did at the start of the game. Some little things to note: spawning pools and cloning vats will now produce organic pop assembly rather than modifying pop growth. Brilliant. Now robots aren't the easy ticket into pop growth, because cloning vats and spawning pools are now going to be hopefully giving you the same amount of extra pop growth as a robot assembly plant used to. Because a robot assembly plant used to be great because you would get flat pop growth to robot assembly. Well, now you'll be getting flat pop growth to cloning vats. That's awesome. And then overpopulated planets will stop generating pops at lower levels of overpopulation. That's cool. So some other little changes they've noted in the free features. So we are getting manual resettlement UI. They've updated that. Well, they've updated how resettlement works, actually. So I think it's good that they've done that. Also, a quality of life update for auto research. I mean, that's actually going to be really useful. When you're in a war, sometimes you don't have the time, especially playing on multiplayer at a fast speed, to be spending even 20 or 30 seconds checking out your research, because you've got 4 or 5 fleets. It's really important you keep watching them. You're doing a little bit of micromanagement with them. So that's, I think, going to be really useful. New diplomacy messages when an empire is destroyed in war. That's cool. Notifications when a member joins or leaves the galactic community. That's cool. And some other features in there too. 10 new envoy-based random events. So that's awesome. We never used to have many envoy-based random events. So I really am looking forward to that. And another thing to note, in the game setup, you can now pick the endgame crisis. Finally, for those of us that haven't managed to actually meet all the endgame crises, what's the plural of crisis? I'm suddenly forgotten. But for those of us that haven't managed to meet the correct endgame crisis, there might be one that you're missing for the achievement. Finally, we can play a game and be sure that the 5, 10, 20 hours of play we put in to get to the end game is not going to mean we suddenly get the same crisis as ever. I mean, it's a really common. I find that I get the contingency a lot, or the Voidborn. I very rarely get the Praetorian Scourge, so that's going to be quite cool. Now, balance changes, and this is really where we're going to get into some of the interesting kind of meat of this new update. So, homeworlds are now going to be size 18 to 21 instead of 16 to 18. That's going to be reflecting the fact that we need more districts. Districts now are going to be really much more crucial than they have been before. I mean, they were always important, but districts are now going to be what you need for all of your buildings. So you can't just build one district and then wait on pop growth. I think if what I was saying before is true about needing to build extra districts to maximize your pop growth, if that brings up your theoretical maximum for your pops, then building your extra districts will be essential. They've changed resettlement, so planets with sapient, unemployed free pops, so that means our slaves won't be going and our employed pops won't be going, now have a 10% chance per month for one to automatically migrate to other planets with appropriate jobs, housing and decent habitability. Migration controls can prevent this auto resettlement. Having multiple unemployed pops on a planet will increase the chance of one of them moving. This is really cool. Finally, we're going to see proper pop migration. I mean, back in the original release of Stellaris, I remember, and maybe not the original, maybe it was a few updates in, but we did have pops, physical pops migrating. That was back when you could have a maximum of up to only 25 pops on a single planet because we had this tile system. And now we're getting back to that kind of idea where the pops can automatically migrate and actual physical pops are moving around. Whereas before this 3.0 update in 2.8 and before now, we've had migration was just another number affecting pop growth, and it didn't feel like things were moving. So I think this is going to be quite cool. Obviously, they've changed greater than ourselves to reflect this. They've added a new Starbase module, Transit Hub. That's going to increase. I think it's a 50% increase. I read in a patch note somewhere in a dev diary, but it's going to increase the auto resettlement from all planets within its system. So now transit hubs are probably going to be pretty essential. Manual resettlement costs have been increased, and now there's an influence cost. This means the influence cost means we're not going to be resettling pops, especially in the early game. In the early game, I think it's 25 influence for a worker. It might be 10 influence, and then 25. I think it's 25, 50, and 100, or it might be 10, 25, 50 for workers, specialists, and then leaders, or not leaders. What are they called? They're the top tier job. But I think it's definitely going to be quite interesting to have to pay this influence, because suddenly it means if you're in a war and you want to evacuate a planet on the front line because you've got, say, 30 pops there and you want to move 20 out of the way to a safe planet, you can't do that anymore. You're not going to have, well, if you do have 200 or 300 influence saved up, that's pretty expensive. It's hard to come by influence especially in the early game. So that's going to be quite interesting. The corvée system will waive it though, which suddenly means the corvée system, or corvée, that's a civic that suddenly I'm interested in. Like, let's say I'm playing an authoritarian empire and I want to be able to move my pops around, I want to move my slaves around, not having to pay influence. That's pretty awesome. That's really awesome. I mean, the thing here is though, you're going to be losing the fact that you're not getting automatic pop migration from. You're not going to be getting this automatic pop migration that you would be getting if they weren't slaves. So I'm not sure that it's really going to balance out. I mean, looking through these patch notes, I think that authoritarian, dictatorial empires are really taking the short end in terms of this update. But I could be wrong. So also Subsume Will and OTA updates, they're going to waive the influence cost. That's kind of cool, I suppose. Manually resettling the last pop on a planet now has significant influence surcharge. Wow. So we can no longer abandon planets. I mean, we can, but it's going to be hella expensive. I imagine 250, 300 influence to abandon a planet. That's a big deal. that no longer means we can just strip our front worlds if we're in some sort of defensive war that we think we're going to lose. Unemployed pop demotion time has been halved. Base of 5 years for a ruler strat and 2.5 years for specialists. This is a great update in my opinion. It's a pain in the ass when you upgrade your planetary capital and suddenly you don't have anything that you're expecting. You update your planetary capital and you've got these unemployed specialists that then take time to come down, or you have to build a building for them, and it's really annoying when that happens. Unemployed pops now provide greater emigration push. I mean, that's fine. Kinship tradition in harmony reduces demotion time by 25% instead of 50. Okay, I mean, I was never a big fan of harmony personally. Some people might be annoyed by that, so okay. Ringworld segments provide half as many jobs as they used to, but the size of the Ringworld has been increased to 10. So Ringworlds now are going to be slightly, and I say slightly, less overpowered. I hope that they keep the mineral cost the same, to be quite honest. I hope that these districts, like the research district, you only get 10 researcher jobs, but it still costs the 2,000 minerals. Commercial Ringworlds now have more clerk jobs but no artisan jobs. Wow, that's a big change. That's going to mean that if you're playing a Ringworld, you're going to have to build industrial segments. I assume they'll have the ability to build industrial segments. It doesn't actually say here that they will, but I assume they're getting a new district. That means you can't just build a research segment and a commercial segment to balance out your economy. That's not going to work anymore. So we're going to have to change our playstyle on Ringworlds a little bit. I mean, you could still take the commercial segment, get your merchants, and then change your policy to have to change it up into the trade good policy. We get trade goods. I mean, that would still be fine. The Shattered Ring origin is no longer guaranteed near habitable planets. Okay. That's actually, I mean, that's not really a big deal. So that's only a big deal when you got the oh wait, no, that is a big deal. Sorry, I take it all back. Yes, they've added the Shattered Ring origin now gives you Ringworld habitability preference, and you get more blockers on the homeworld. Wow, okay, so this is big. So this makes Shattered Rings, which are less powerful than the Habitat. It's much less powerful than the Habitat 1, the Habitat Start, the Origin, Voidborn, Void Dweller. It's always been less powerful. But now you can't colonize planets. Boom. That's, you know, this is a nerf right in the ground for Shattered Ring starts. I mean, there are ways around this. You could go Xenophile, get a load of pops in, but first off, you're not going to be guaranteed 2 habitable planets anymore. Yeah, I mean, you're going to take Void Dweller over Ringworld every time now if you have a choice here, because you know with Void Dweller you're going to get some of the bonuses that you would get with this with Ringworld. You can get the research districts on a Void on a Habitat, and that's kind of equivalent to the research segments on your Ring, but now you're not going to be. You know, now you can build more planets. With a Ringworld start, you're only going to have your 1 Ringworld, and then you're going to take ages before you can repair your other 2 segments. So you're stuck on this 1 planet for a long time. That's basically, they've turned it into a Gaia world kind of start. I think that's kind of fair, to be quite honest. Habitat capital buildings, now moving on to Habitat and Void Dwellers. Habitat capital buildings now grant a maintenance drone job for machine empires. This is really important. Habitats were really annoying in that you didn't get any maintenance drone jobs from the Habitat capital building. So this is a good change. They've changed the adoption effects for domination traditions for Void Dwellers. That's good too. And they basically made a load of little changes here, which where they've all the benefits that were benefiting your regular capitals and now going to capital buildings are now going to benefit the Habitat capital buildings as well, and the Habitat trade districts. And that's good for Habitats, but all of this is adding up to is that Void Dweller is now even more powerful. I mean, when you finish the expansion tradition for Void Dwellers, It reduces the alloy and influence cost of habitats by 20%. Wow. You know, that's a 300 alloy reduction on a habitat. That means actually I want to spec into expansion as Void Dweller first. I used to think that with Void Dwellers you wanted to go with the research tradition first, because you're not going to be building your extra habitats. But now it's like you want to go expansion, and then you want to start building new habitat. Expansion, a couple of alloy buildings or the alloy districts. Get your production up to something like 30 or 40 per month. Go with the habitat, the Void Dweller perk. And then finish out expansion tradition, get the Void Dweller perk. Now you're looking at habitats that cost you 1,200 alloys each. Yeah, that Void Dweller, that's just going to steamroll. I mean, that's insane. Simplify the rules regarding what robots of different tiers can work. This is massive. Simple note robots can now work all tier jobs. I'll say that again. Simple robots can now work all tier jobs. Honestly, wow. I mean, wow. That's crazy. I mean, before we were stuck with the energy district jobs. We couldn't work with the generator district jobs and the clerk jobs, which meant, you know, I think that was balanced, but it was fiddly. It was definitely fiddly, don't get me wrong. Now, there's no reason not to build a robot production plant because they can work any job. Fantastic for robots. For materialist empires. I mean, later on, we're going to look at what they've done to planetary unification origin, or prosperous unification even. Which, spoiler alert, it's if you're into that origin, I'm very sorry. But now it looks like Mechanist is going to be a really good pick to start with. I mean, really, really good. And it's going to keep being good into the mid-game and the late game. Droids can now work all worker and specialist jobs. Wow, so droids can now work your science jobs. They can work science jobs, and they can work entertainer jobs. They can work administrator jobs. Before, droids couldn't work science and administrator jobs. Now they can. Boom. And then synthetics follow the same rule as droids. Unless you have full AI rights, then they can work ruler jobs. That's the same as before. So I don't actually think that's a change. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, guys, but I'm pretty sure that's the same. Now, they've changed the authorities and the ethics. The democratic authority now increases the automatic resettlement chance by 50%. That's amazing. You know, democratic is now probably going to be pretty much, I think, the best pick, because that resettlement is going to be really useful. Really useful. Especially if you can get some migration packs with other empires. Wow, that's going to be good. Oligarchic now increases influence from factions by 50%. That's pretty fine. You know, I'm not going to complain about that. They've always had kind of good bonuses in their agendas. I usually think that Oligarchic is pretty much the best authority. I usually play with that one. It's slightly better than Diplomatic in that, or Democratic even, in that you can choose your bonuses. You can choose your leader for 200, and then they get a 20-year bonus, and hopefully you get the research one. There's some other good ones in there. But yeah, so this is definitely good for oligarchies. Dictatorial now reduces empire sprawl penalties by 10%. That's crap. There's nothing really to say about that. Empire sprawl's not really that big an issue. I mean, as we'll see a bit later, I think because I skimmed through these before starting to talk about them, just to kind of get the broad strokes, the general thrust. And Empire Sprawl will be slightly more of an issue, not necessarily for the reasons you think, but still, this 10% is kind of crap. Imperial retaining +1 edict, that's fine. Machine intelligence now grants +1 monthly pop assembly. Wow! A base +1 monthly pop assembly. That's good for machines. I mean, machines were behind, in my opinion, behind organic empires before, unless you were running the rogue caretakers, which could really compete with organic empires. You were, to be quite frank, behind in terms of how your economy was built. Now, though, extra pop growth. Hopefully, that does something to offset it. And there's some encryption for just out consciousness ethic. Great. We don't really know how important encryption is going to be yet, so that's just +2 is just a number. It doesn't really mean anything to us. So, envoys, diplomacy, and espionage. The base number of envoys is now 2. Great. That's really good because we're going to need to use envoys for doing everything. For doing our first contact, we're going to need envoys. For improving relations for spies, for all of this stuff, we need envoys. So I think it's great that they've doubled it up. I think we're actually going to find, even though we've got twice as many to start with, we're going to find that we really feel like we've got less. Because instead of just sending one to the galactic community and forgetting about it, or one to a neighbor to improve relations, now you're going to be constantly trying to move them around to build spy networks and do espionage and first contact and all of these things. So that's pretty cool. Now we've got a load of bonuses here to network growth and things like that. That's to encryption, decryption. These numbers are great. They don't really mean much to us yet. You're going to get some bonuses from some different things. Transcendence now gives you base intel of +10 on all empires. I don't know how big +10 is, so I couldn't, it's just a number at the moment. That could be great. That could be this. It could be +10 out of a possible 100, which would be good. It could be +10 out of a possible 1,000, which is not so good. So, +2 encryption, +2 code breaking, that's cool, but it's nice to see that Transcendence, which is kind of arguably the worst of the 3 ascension paths you could go down, is now got a little buff, so that's cool. And then we've got some other bonuses here. Universal Compatibility Tradition now gives you 1 extra envoy, and Shared Destiny now grants 2 envoys. So if you want to be running a diplomatic run, if you want to be the ruler of the galaxy, Shared Destiny suddenly, a perk which I would never consider before, suddenly became good. +2 envoys, that could be worth it for a perk. Maybe not, but possibly in the mid game, you're gonna, you're an extra 20% to your diplomatic weight in the galactic community can be the difference between being on the Galactic Council and not. That's a big buff. So I think that's very cool. Establish embassy diplomatic action exists again. Great, and increases intel between the 2 empires, triple the effectiveness of improved relations. That's pretty cool. We get some base intel from some things. Sentry Array Megastructure now increases base intel. That's pretty cool. With the Sentry Array, we're not going to automatically know everything. I think that's pretty good. Now we've had some additional economic balance. So they've added 3 new society techs that give upgraded capital buildings progressively larger bonuses to production, but they also increase your job upkeep. That's really cool. We haven't seen anything like this before. That's great. I mean, society is definitely the research area that's lacking the most. So for society to get extra techs, I'm a big fan of that. I think it's good to have balance across the 3 different tech trees as to the importance. Rural, farming, mining, and generator colony designation bonuses increased. Brilliant. As well as bonuses from 5-year plans. Urban worlds now get a trade bonus. Wow, suddenly urban worlds are actually useful. We're going to get a bonus to trade. If you're running a Megacorp and you're running a clerk build, urban worlds are now going to boost your trade bonus. That's fantastic. I can't complain about that. It's nice that designations, urban world before it was useless, so it's good that they've changed it around so there's actually a purpose to things. I still say that rural is pretty crap. You want to specialize your planet and then pick farming or mining a generator, but maybe someone could figure out a use for rural. If you do, put it in the comments, let me know about it. Mining capacity and farming subsidy edicts now grant +50% production. Brilliant. They're actually now really useful. So that's good. Prosperity adoption. Traditions mining station output bonus increased to 20%. Wow. I already thought it was good at 10. That's even better. Technologies that boost space-based resource gathering and research are now significantly stronger as they advance in tier. So before we were kind of capped out at +50%. Now this means that you're going to be getting a lot of resources from the space you have in the late game as your technology goes up. That is going to mean that playing wide is now even better. It was good before. Tor was kind of lacking because you could offset your empire sprawl with admin building. So playing wide just got even better. Some people are not going to like that, but yeah. Energy output of technicians and tech drones have been significantly increased. Well, that's another good thing. Until now, I've seen people do the maths, and producing food and selling it can be more efficient, especially as a robot, than just generating energy, which is ludicrous. That shouldn't make sense unless you're producing food to have the the matrix, whatever I can't remember what it's called. There's a species rights for biologicals when you're a machine empire where you can basically plug them into the matrix and generate energy with them. I can't remember what it's called. If you remember, please somebody write it in the comments. I'd love to know what it is. I've not ever actually done it. I think it's cool. I've only heard someone talk about it. Maybe it doesn't actually exist. Maybe there's a dream I had. But yeah, unless you're doing that, kind of drifted off topic here. But unless you're doing that, energy districts are actually kind of worse. So it's good that they've boosted the output of technicians and tech drones. Trade value generated by POPs with decent or better living standards has been increased by 25 to 35%. This is another really cool thing. This means that not only are you going to get a bonus to happiness from better living standards, but you're also going to get better trade output. I think that's pretty relevant. I mean, people that are happy and aren't worried about their whether or not they're going to eat next week tend to be more productive in terms of producing things. I mean, I make these videos. If I was terrified where my next meal was going to be coming from, I wouldn't really, I don't think, have the time, patience, or compassion to be making some of these videos or playing these games. So I think it's a pretty reasonable. Bit of an off topic again, but yeah. So effect on trade from most jobs, including criminals, has been increased. So, I think this is saying clerks got better. I think that's what they're subtly saying here. Food processing, mineral purification, energy nexus buildings now increase the number of jobs added by their districts. So what we're seeing here basically is a big change up across all these buildings. Everything's kind of producing more. We're getting less pops, and each pop is going to be making more stuff. So, hopefully that's gonna. I think that's what they're going for, is going to balance out here. But I think what we're going to actually see is in the early game, as our empires get to their mid stage, when they're kind of in the exponential phase of population growth, because it's going to be an S curve like a traditional population growth model. What we're going to see is actually, I think, more pops producing more resources than we would at an equivalent stage in the past. I'm talking about 2220 here, something like that. But then later on, we're going to plateau out, or quite quickly even, we're going to plateau out and stop increasing our production. So it's going to be an interesting change. Now, reduce the special resource upkeep of Ecumenopolis arcologies to 1 unit from 2. That's great. That halves the number of special resource buildings we need to make. So that's pretty cool. Change to discovery tradition. Cool. Now, Starbase hydroponics produced 10 food. Boom. Hydroponics just became a useful building. Before it produced 3, I think. Useless. Not only that, technologies that boost technician, farmer, and miner output now also apply to energy, food, or mineral producing Starbase buildings and modules. So a plus 20% bonus to your farmer output will add 2 food to your hydroponics bays. This is good. Before, we had buildings that were useless and you just didn't build. This is adding depth, and that's great. It's good to have more options in this game, so there's not a single meta. It's crap when it's like, this is the only way you want to play. I mean, I've been making videos and I've been showing off some very specific ways you can go, and most of the time I've kind of focused on the fact that certain buildings are rubbish and you don't even want a building, and that's build them, and that's my opinion, but it kind of, I think, backed up by the numbers. Here we're seeing that they're kind of changing what's good and what's bad by kind of bringing the good stuff down a bit, but also making the crap stuff worthwhile. So next ones we're looking at are nebula refineries. We're going to make 10 minerals, up from 6 I think it was before. That's good. And also making 1 exotic gas. Wow, that's fantastic. And then black hole observatories are also going to make a volatile mote. Well, you don't usually build many of them, but that's still good. They've made a change to how the endgame crisis is going to happen. That's pretty cool. So in the first 50 years of the endgame, in certain circumstances, which are no living fallen empires. So if you've killed all the fallen empires, crisis can happen in the first 50 years of endgame. That now suddenly means maybe you don't want to kill that fallen empire. I mean, you could kill them, maybe you don't want to. But by not killing them, you're increasing the chance they turn into an awakened empire. So, suddenly there's risk involved. There's risk now in not doing things, and that's great. I mean, a lot of these changes I'm seeing here seem really good. As long as the war in heaven is not happening or concluded or started 15 years ago. I mean, I'm a bit miffed if it started 15 years ago. It's 15 years of war in heaven and you're on a huge galaxy. It's probably barely just begun. If a crisis starts then, you're pretty screwed. Ouch. A country has researched jump drives or side jump drives. Well, I mean, most of us probably do that before the endgame starts, so that's going to be So now we're probably going to increase the chance of getting the unbidden. They've apparently nuked the old script to randomize which crisis shows up. Now it's simply purely a random choice. That is random. Brilliant. I mean, I have to say, great. They've buffed the perks for Galactic Union. To be honest, I think Galactic Union needed some perks. It was, in a lot of ways, the worst one you could pick, unless the only other one you could really get was the Research one. I mean, there are some cases where the Research Federation is good, don't get me wrong, but otherwise Galactic Union was pretty low down there. Now, what have we got next? Gestalt Capital buildings now provide more amenities and or maintenance or sign up drone jobs. Good. Before, we usually had to build the first building on most worlds, or not the first building, the first district would be the Nexus district. You could kind of put it off to the second one, but you'd be running at -2 or 3 amenities, which would put you on like 30% stability, which would be a -20% to the output of your workers. So you kind of had to go Nexus first to get that extra maintenance job, or Nexus second even, and it was just really annoying. Now we won't have to do that. Brilliant. Bureaucrat upkeep raised to 2 consumer goods. Coordinator upkeep raised to 6 energy. I'm going to say that one again. Bureaucrat upkeep raised to 2 consumer goods. Boom. They've just doubled the upkeep cost of bureaucrats. And I haven't read anywhere that they've changed what the planetary designation of a bureaucratic world does. I think it's still just, it doesn't decrease the maintenance of your bureaucrats. So that now means that there's twice the cost for reducing your admin cap. That's pretty crucial. A doubling of cost there. While in the early game, you only have a few of these guys out because you're not really going to mind about being over your admin cap. But in the late game, that's when when you're running something like 50 bureaucrats across your empire. That's an extra 50 consumer goods. That's 100 energy worth of product coming out of your economy. In the mid game, that can be quite important. Now, the next one as well. So, a big change to bureaucrats, big change to medical workers. Medical workers now increase planet habitability by 1% each. That is something. Now, I think, so when I first read this, actually, I think I must have thought it was something different. In my head, I went, 1% each, and that means they can get up to 5. You'll only get up to 5% change when you upgrade the building. So that's good. 1% is good. I mean, that's going to give you a 0.5% increase to your resource output, reduce your upkeep, reduce your amenities usage, that kind of stuff, which I can't fault. But yeah, a 2% increase to your habitability, it's not something you'd usually care about. There's a video somewhere, I've gone through the maths of building a and I think some big YouTubers as well have gone through the maths of building a building a gene clinic. And basically, the general consensus, I think, in the community is that you shouldn't do it. It's not worth it. Because what you're going to be doing is, as I said before, you're going to be taking these 2 jobs. You could be working, say, an alloy plant. Instead, you're going to be working on increasing your pop growth by 5%. Well, that 5% pop growth, that is equivalent to 0.15 plus 0.15 extra pop growth. That means it's going to take you somewhere in the region of 55 years to produce 1 pop with your plus 1.1. Say it again. Fell over my tongue there. 55 years to produce 1 pop at plus 0.15 pop growth. So if you just worked an alloy job for 55 years, you'd have all the output of that. Otherwise, you could have the medical job and wait 55 years with no alloy output and then get a pop you could put in an alloy job. It's not worth it. I mean, I'm not convinced the extra bonus to habitability is going to make it worth it. Maybe it's good, it's better, but I don't think it's there yet. Still not. Greatly increase the amount of research points you reward in events. Now that's big because events actually, they gave you little bonuses, a few hundred research, and that usually equates to a month or 2 of research, which is not that big a deal. They've changed Wentwork, which is interesting. Just some minor changes. Science Federation Election Challenge now takes each participating country's level of scientific progress into account to a far greater degree than previously. Good change. Before, if you could be miles ahead of another empire in your federation and you could have massive bonuses to your science, but if they're ahead of you, you got, if they're ahead of you, if the numbers rolled, you could have some idiot that hasn't even discovered proton launchers apparently becoming the leader due to their scientific expertise of the Federation you're in. And that was just kind of crap, from a thematic standpoint at least. And it bummed me out as well when I was playing as it. I thought that I was kind of guaranteed it because I had overwhelming science compared to the other members of my science federation, and that just wasn't the case. Buff to enclaves, that's cool. Base speed of purge is now set in the purge type on species rights. Interesting. It's now possible for pop growth, assembly and purge to overflow, adding or removing multiple pops per month. I think what they're elaborating on here is that when you get to the exponential phase, if the planet's big enough and you've got big enough bonuses, you could end up having, adding 2 pops a month. Wow. That would be insane. Change timing for Caravaneers. I can only hope that this means they won't spam us with deals. I like getting the Caravaneers. I like them in the beginning, but they weigh you down with the number of deals that come in. So yeah, honestly, interesting. Outposts and other star bases now grant 1 sensor range. This is really good. This now means that you can build your starbase, and you're actually going to get visibility on the systems that border you. You're going to know if there's a fleet there adjacent to you, which is good. Before now, you had to build up your sensor technology. You had to research the first level of sensor technology just to know if someone was next to you, which is stupid. And I really like this change. Some changes to hyperlane detection of range of sensors and science chips has been reduced. Cool. Clone vats now cost 500 minerals and cost food to build, and have minor energy but significant food upkeep. I think that's good thematically. And then there's some changes here to necrophages. You can't now have an assembly speed penalty, so you can't just build them out of spare body parts. This means you can't build a clone lab and then just build them, which is good. Grow extra of them, because before there was a negative modifier, and the clone lab would give you a positive modifier, but that would kind of offset a bit. And the 9 to 75% didn't really make up for the plus 33. Now that you're going to get, say, +1 or +2 to pop growth from clone lab, that might have been better. But now they've changed it, so that won't be a thing. Lithoids also have -25% organic pop assembly. So the clone vat and spawning pool processes lose efficiency, turning food into rock. So that kind of nerfs you from being lithoids with your pop assembly stuff. So that's interesting. Hopefully these two together will mean that the necrophage lithoid build, which I've seen people talk about, which is really quite overpowered. Hopefully that means that that's kind of dead in the water. Now other empires can compete on a similar level with the changes. A corporate embassy now requires major capital building. That's pretty normal, but it only gives 5% economic diplomatic weight instead of 10. Cool. Disinformation center now requires major capital. These changes are because they've changed the way that buildings are built. So that's, makes sense. Organic paradise building now has both artisan and maintenance drone jobs. Finally, that means we don't have to build factories as a robot. Thank God. It was the stupidest thing ever, and I hated it when you had to build all these goddamn consumer factories. It's good now. It's just a little bit of bookkeeping. They've tidied it up into the organic paradise, which is good. Necrophage centers of elevation now produce 1, 2 or 3 necrophyte jobs depending on how many organic pops grow in 10 years. Pretty cool. And that means you're unlikely to run out of necrophyte pops even with a new pop system. Pretty cool. Upgraded House of Apotheosis gives a flat 6, so that could still be dangerous. Now the big one here. Planetary Unification Homeworld modifier from Prosperous Unification Origin expires after 10 years. So they've nerfed Planetary Unification. Arguably, it was vanilla, but it was definitely one of the better origins. They have nerfed it into the ground so hard. It's now useless. After 10 years, it doesn't do anything for you. It's a bonus at the beginning. Maybe it'll be good if you want to try and rush into something, but I don't think I'll be taking it anymore. It used to be I used to play that one when I wanted to take a bonus that wasn't completely overpowered, like Void Dweller, but was still useful. So that's good. That's interesting. I liked it before, how it was. So the good thing about this, I suppose, is when you conquer another homeworld, you're not going to have multiple planets with planetary unification on. And it kind of means some of the other things like Relic World and things like that suddenly become a bit more appealing. You know, planetary unification bonus in the early game. Relic World, you're going to get bonus in the mid game when you turn it into an ecumenopolis. So now we've got some more things. Automation. Significant updates have been made to planetary and sector automation. Fantastic. Planetary automation build list and behavior have been heavily revised. Thank God. Hopefully now we can actually leave the automation on for our worlds and it won't make stupid choices like building clone vats as our second building and then building a load of random buildings we don't want, need or care about. I remember listening to an interview with one of the lead creator, and he was saying they got in some players to work through and work out the Boolean logic, or the AI if you want to call it, but it's basically, from what I'm aware, a load of Boolean logic statements on how this planetary automation build list and behavior should be revised. And that's great. Hopefully this is good, and this will also mean now that the AI builds better buildings. So the next bit, planetary automation will now only upgrade non-capital buildings if it will not cause a monthly deficit and if at least one job in the upgraded building would be filled. Hallelujah, you know, hallelujah. We hopefully are getting towards an AI that makes reasonable decisions both for us and for the empires we're against. You know, it was kind of crap having to play on maximum difficulty, giving the AI a load of random bonuses because they were like, herp-de-derp, I built Gene Clinic, burp-a-derp-a-derp, you know? And that's good. So, Sector AI now prioritizes districts' buildings upgrades in that order rather than vice versa. Good. Sector AI now knows when to stop building. Amazing. Sector AI now knows how Empire Sprawl actually works. Thank God. They're not going to build 1 billion administration districts. I mean, I've seen this happen before. They build a load of extra administration districts and you just don't even need them. It was stupid. Sector AI now knows that the Crime Lord deal makes anti-crime buildings superfluous. I mean, I'm not sure about that. You know, I kind of disagree. Crime Lord buildings are actually really important. Sorry, anti-crime buildings, if you use the Crime Lord, are really important because that 50% bonus or 100% bonus to crime, whatever it is, only applies after the modifier. So anti-crime buildings reduce the total. So maybe they don't actually realize how their Crime Lord deal works. You know, that doesn't sound good. Fixed a bug where the Sector AI would not really care about its designated speciality. Great. And they've renamed automatic exploration to automatic survey. Pretty cool. I mean, that I guess maybe some people are having some issues with it, but okay. So performance and stability. So let's look at those now. So performance and stability. They fixed many inefficiencies in the scripts, deciding which species rights you could pick. As a bonus, the scripts are also infinitely more readable now. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. A hotjoin.oos save is created on GameStart 2 now. That's cool. Hopefully that's going to fix some of the issues we had with desyncs and hotjoin. Added a new checksum, assists and flags, only used in Hardo's. Fine. Sorry, Hard OOS even. Fixed an OOS update when modifying a species. The OOS happening when modifying a species, sorry. Fixed an OOS due to, which is out of sync, due to robotic pops getting happiness. Fixed OOS issue arising due to incorrect order of updating caches. Fixed desync that can happen if two empires pick the same start. Good. You know, good. I like changes to stability. I like playing multiplayer. That's good. Then some UI changes. So the MP games now show an icon in front of the player that is paused. That's pretty cool. Now we can know who's paused the game. New lock text for Golden Rule Federation Challenge. That's pretty cool. Improvement to Golden Rule Challenge outcome message. Cool. Added a menace console commands. Good. Some things. Let's see. Anything interesting? Icon for a resolution is now shown in the pop window for proposing it. That's interesting. And just some helpful changes to the UI. Good. So, AI now. The AI should now better understand what a building that gives a percentage bonus for a resource does. I can only hope they've worked it out better than before, because this is going to be another good thing. I can't see an issue with this. They've also fixed cases where a weakened fleet would get stuck trying to return to its home base which is unreachable. Great. These are really good changes. I don't think I see here, but there's also a bug that I've seen quite a few times with the invincible fleet. Maybe this has something to do with that and we'll fix it. I don't know. Maybe. Made the AI use the Caravaneer to buy loot boxes and play the slots. Finally, the AI can get a reliquary and also hopefully get the Galatron, because I've never actually seen the AI get the Galatron in game. Maybe they've just been unlucky, but I suspect not. I suspect actually maybe they've not been buying it. Cost is now properly withdrawn from the AI budget when proposing a resolution. Good. Before now, I'm pretty sure that the AI could just propose resolutions in the galactic community willy-nilly, and there would be no fee, because they would always be proposing all these resolutions. You'd be like, how have you got the influence? All of you got the influence all the time. Genocidal AIs will now attack any unknown science ships that enter their system. Thematic, good, great change. The AI will now take better consideration of which ships already exist in Federation fleets before building new ones. That's good. I mean, to be honest, I prefer they just build battleships. If it were up to me, that would be my 2 cents. The AI will now build a better distribution of different ship types of Federation fleets. I mean, in the late game, I only want them to build battleships. I get very annoyed when they don't, and I actually delete the non-battleships to try and increase the number of battleships I've got. Maybe I keep some of the corvettes if I want the corvettes ban fleet, but yeah. Fixed a bug that stopped the AI from ever proposing Federation laws. That's good. I've seen games where the AI federations basically don't change their laws the whole game, and it's kind of like, why? You're level 4 and you're still decentralized? Especially centralization, they've said here. So yeah, that's actually going to be a really good change. That now means if you're coming into an AI federation, they're already going to have made some good changes. And the AI federations in the game around you are going to get better. That, can't be understated. The AI performing better is a good thing. We want harder AI. We want to have a better range of possible difficulty levels. It fixed the AI not starting fresh research while currently researching a special project with no science cost. I had no idea they were doing that. That's nonsense. Wow. Okay. So that's pretty good then. That's nothing bad to say about that. The AI will now prioritize spending on fleets a bit better if it recently lost a war. I didn't know they weren't doing that either. That's pretty good. Reduce the AI's need for passing sanctions upon sanctions in the galactic community. Good. I know when we've passed quite a lot of laws, it gets to a point where the AI stops wanting to pass new laws when most of the laws are at level 2 or 3, and all they care about is going, sanctions! Sanction everybody! So that's good. They made quite a few changes to modding. I'm not going to go through those. I mean, this is already getting on quite a way. So I'm not going to go through those. Then there's a big list of bug fixes. Nerve staple pots can no longer have military service. That's a good one that I can no longer have full military service. That's a good one. I was annoyed when they could do that. It didn't make much sense. That's something that jumps out to me. What else is there? The Great Khan will no longer try and fail to form a democratic federation of Khaldom if they lack inhabited planets. That's another good thing too. They fixed the Wentwork problem that could happen. I've seen that happen before. Enable better start text to the War in Heaven. There's some good little bugs they've found and fixed here. Uplift button now works instead of just giving you the sad button noise. I mean, that's a good fix too. I definitely run into uplift problems. They fixed the tooltip when we upgrade all of our defense platforms. That's another great thing. It's been really annoying when they haven't done that. Gateways in enemy systems cannot be used by the occupying side. Let's just check that. I'm not sure which way around they've done that, but I think before you couldn't. Now they're making it so you can. If they are, that's kind of good. That gives strategic advantage to coming in with your fleet and grabbing a gateway. And there's more. I mean, if you want to go through the complete list of them, I do recommend you head over to Paradox, the forum. I'm going to leave the link to the patch notes in the description down below. So check that out. Wow, that has been a monster of a patch notes. Thanks for sticking with me through to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you've found something useful in me going through it and giving you my opinion on what these patch notes mean and how they're going to affect the game coming in next week. Now I'm just going to briefly talk about something before wrapping up here. So a couple of you have gotten in touch with me to ask if I have a Patreon or if there's any way of supporting this channel. So until recently, no, I didn't have a Patreon, but I decided to look into it and set it up. So what I'm going to be doing, because I really don't believe in segregating my viewers. I don't want to have one group of viewers that get to see a bunch of videos and then another smaller group that, due to the fact they can, support my channel through financial contributions, which, as I'm going to talk about in a minute, would be really helpful. I don't want to discriminate between those of you that could do that and want to do that and those of you that don't. So what I've kind of done, I've only set one tier reward up on my Patreon, which is a general supporter. So I've started this channel a couple of months ago. I started in the middle of January. And if you go to my Patreon, there's a little description in there, and I talked about the reasons why I set this channel up and how I came about doing it. But in essence, I don't have much equipment. I bought a microphone to do this, and that's what I'm speaking to you through now. And otherwise, I've got some kind of it was free, open source, off-the-shelf software for recording and editing everything. And I'm really kind of new to all of this, and I'm glad that some of you have kind of stuck with me as I've improved. Definitely, there's I think you'll agree, a big change between my first video and my latest video. And what I'd really like to do is improve the quality of the content that I can provide, because I actually really enjoy making these videos, and I found it really rewarding to kind of give something back to a game that I've loved and followed since the beginning. I mean, I was watching the Twitch streams back in 2016 when they were first showing off the game. I was watching the blog and all of that, and I just thought it was fantastic. I waited all of my childhood and through into some of my adult years for a game like this to pop up, and then finally it did. And I think you'll all agree with me that it's a great game. We love this game, and it's definitely a game that's got a good learning curve, a steep learning curve, and really requires you to sort of take a lot of time to understand what's going on. And that's why I've set the channel up, really, to help people get more out of the game by being able to understand what it is they could be doing. And so, if you want to support me on Patreon, and I've set the minimum donation to €1. I live in Europe, so I've set it to euros, but I think you pay in whatever local currency you've got. Any amount of money that someone wants to help to support my channel with would be, I'd be deeply grateful to have a patron, or to have patrons, plural. I'd happily be the Leonardo to your Medici, and I'd like to use that to improve the quality. So first thing I need to get is I don't even know what it's called. You see, is this special shield that goes in front of the microphone, so that when I talk into it like this, you don't get the big spuffs. I apologize for that. I probably should have given you a warning, but yeah. So that's the next thing I need to buy. I also want to improve the graphics. I want to get some proper software so I can edit the videos in a better way. At the moment, it is quite rudimentary. So any amount that anyone would want to give to support my channel would definitely be deeply appreciated. So I'll pop a link to that down below in the description. If you'd like to support me, please feel free to. But as I said, I will never be giving out special. I won't be discriminating between those of you that can afford to support the channel and want to, and people that really enjoy the videos, really like the content, but can't afford to support it. It's not something that's possible for them. So I'm never going to do that. But I mean, if you do become a Patreon, something that is definitely going to happen is that I am going to be looking for feedback. I'm a very new channel. I'm very new to all of this YouTube stuff, and I'll definitely be looking to that community. I'm hoping to kind of build a bit of a community there and get feedback from my supporters to kind of see what they liked, what I could improve, how I could change something up and do something better. That's definitely something I'm going to be looking at into doing there. So there are definite benefits in terms of you're going to get access to kind of talking to me. I mean, I like to engage in the comments quite a lot. I hope that you've noticed that I like to talk to people that talk to me. Definitely a talker if you ask anyone I know. So that's my bit about Patreon. I probably won't bring it up again. Maybe I'll mention it at the end of a video or two in future, just that it exists. But thank you for watching this video. Thank you for sticking around this long. Wow, this has been, I think, the longest video I've created so far. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, if you have, please leave a like. If you've got any feedback, please leave a comment. And if you'd like to see more content like this, please subscribe. Thank you for watching.